Hello and welcome to Confetti Industry. Welcome to your session with Vicky Elwick, so stencil workshop today. So she'll be taking you through different steps on Adobe's InDesign. So please use the chat function to ask questions. We'll aim to answer as many as we can. And we hope you enjoyed today's session. A massive thank you to Vicky for taking the time out to join us today for the 15th Confetti Industry Week. So don't forget, you can still book on to any upcoming events going to the Industry Week Confetti website. Make sure to sign up using your Confetti or NTU email address. And as a part of Industry Week, we're running a competition where you can win some cool prizes. All you have to do is tag us on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag IW21, sharing your experiences throughout the week. So Vicky, please make sure you remain on the call at the end of the session after our students left so we can do a quick thank you and a short debrief. And I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Great, thanks Elliot. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Vicky of Stencil Creative Agency. Thanks for joining me today for this workshop. Like you guys, I started out doing graphic design at school, college, through to university, where I did graphic design and photography. I found myself an internship and then onto my first job, and now many years later, will not say how many, art director at Stencil. Working for an agency like Stencil gives you the chance to work on a variety of projects with a mixture of clients and gain lots of experience. It really gets you stuck into graphic design on the whole, and you can find out what you want to focus on, or like me, you just love working on a mixture. Creativity is obviously important, but knowing how to use the tools available, how to make your vision a reality is too. To be a professional, you need to know how to make a quality, polished and consistent design with great attention to detail. If you really get to know those powerful tools you have available, they won't hold your ideas back. So the sooner you work on that, the better. And I want to help you along with that today. We're going to be looking at how to use InDesign, industry leading tool. It's for layout. It's one of the most important programs we use currently. We use it every day for all sorts of tasks. And I'll show you a few examples now. All right. So here at Stencil, we've used it for all sorts. I use it every day. We use it for brochures and magazines. We do a lot of magazines. All sorts of brand guidelines, business cards, business stationery, restaurant menus, all sorts of things for lovely restaurants. So you might recognize this one, advertising. And today we're going to be looking at how to use the program with a look into magazine design specifically. Magazines can have a real variety of design within a single issue, but tend to keep to a base set of rules. So they are a really great project to learn InDesign from. We're going to be working on a real project of ours. This one here, North Sands magazine. It's already been created and finished, but we'll be reconstructing sections from this beautiful magazine and its lovely style. We'll be looking at how we build up pages, how we use assets, how we use typography, keep style consistency, and break the rules when we need to. For those of you with InDesign, you can follow along, hopefully. I'm going to get started now, but you should have been sent an InDesign package to get you started, as a small part already completed, and various style elements set up. So we'll go through those to start with. If everyone just wants a minute to get started, you might have some issues with fonts and things. I'll just open it up now actually so you can see what might occur. So you have a folder like this. InDesign doesn't have embedded images. All images, all assets are linked to the files. So if you are to hand this over to someone, you need to package it up so they have those linked files as well. So what you'll have today is the InDesign file and also a link folder with just a couple of images in there in the starting section. So I just open that up. Now you might have some issues with links. This could happen if you move the file or if the images have been updated in between the last time you've opened it, or say you've been handed a new folder, which you have. In this instance, I'm just going to say update links, and because it's a package, it's just going to do it automatically, which is great. We can see at the bottom it says no errors, so that's super. But if you do have any errors, you might need to just click on the images with errors. They'll have like a little red icon here. Just click on those, click on the relink button here, and just find them in your computer. And it'll probably find the other one as well because they're together. Also with the package, you might have a fonts folder. You haven't today, but you can have one. That's just in case who you're sharing it with doesn't have the exact same fonts. They can then install those and their document will work fine as well. You though should have installed a selection of Adobe Creative Cloud fonts today. So there's no need for you to install any fonts I've supplied. You just tick them on the Adobe Creative Cloud website, so they're active, and then they should function in InDesign, no problem. So hopefully you haven't got any font issues when they come up, but if you do, just pick any fonts you've got instead. Can always go back and change those later. Or if you're happy keeping with those, that's absolutely fine too. So we'll go through a couple of bits about how this document is set up first, but can I just give you a minute, just check everyone's okay, anyone that's following along, get their document open. Let us know in chat if you've got any problems. Great, see a few of you have got started. Super. I'll give you just another minute to make sure there's no errors coming up, so don't blast ahead. Oh good, do that. Great. I'll go over some of the setup stuff to do with this document now, and then if everyone's still opening InDesign, open the file up, should be able to catch up during that time. So we'll just touch on some bits to do with this. So this document is really well set up for you guys. Let me just move some of these bits. To start with, we've got, just to go over how it's set up, we've got master pages in our pages panel. These are set up, so they're basically like templates that you can set up. So anything that appears on the master file, you can then have it apply to your pages inside. So say we've got, in this instance, page numbers and the tiny header. They will appear on every single page, but it's super useful to use master pages because say you've got a really long document, a book maybe, a brochure with hundreds and hundreds of pages, multiple sections. Maybe you want like different colored sections. And so you could set up multiple master pages with different colored backgrounds and then just apply those to each section of your document. And then say if your client wanted to suddenly change one of those colors from yellow to orange, you don't have to go through and update 50 pages individually. You just do the master page and it will update them all straight away. Dead easy, much faster. The next thing about this is set up with various grids on. So we've got a 12-column grid set up, which is just perfect for a magazine because it gives you a bit of flexibility. Obviously 12 is divisible by 6, 4, 3, 2. So you've got many ways you can lay this out. And all of them have the same gutter width. That's the gap between the columns. So you know you've always got that same gap everywhere. And it just adds to the consistency. You can set up margins and columns here, and you can actually set those up specifically for the master pages. So you can have a variety if you needed. The other thing we've got set up is our margins. So we've got a nice big top margin to account for page numbers. And then we've got a decent outside one, 12, and then the inside one is important because this magazine has a perfect bound spine. That means it's got a bit of a chunk to it, a bit of a spine going on there. So if you open it up, some of that very middle of the page is going to get lost into the spine. So you don't want your text to be too near to it. So we always make sure we have an extra wide bit of spacing there to account for that. And then the bottom we've left open just because of the baseline grid, which I'll just touch on next. So we've put a guide in there. We didn't want to have a margin.
Hi, Vicky.
Yeah.
Just to say, why would you use a baseline grid?
So I can show you more why in a bit, but if you have like multiple columns in a magazine, you typically have a lot of text columns. It's just going to look much neater because all the text is going to be on the same lines. It's all going to flow really nicely, and then you always have sort of those nice, almost like boxy edges of where the text sits. So you can have real nice control of the white space around it. It just looks so much neater, so much more consistent throughout. You'll get an impression of that when we get to a bit more content. So I'll show you how that looks when we get to it. But I'll explain a little bit how that's set up, because it is something you'd have to do right at the start, which is why it's already done. If I just zoom in, you should be able to see it. So it's like lined paper going on here, and all this text is sitting right on those lines. We would have decided these fonts first of all. So we would have had some kind of style sheet going on where we came up with all the styles for this magazine. And then we would have decided the size, probably just the body text to get it rolling. And this is 10.4 on the line spacing, yeah. So our baseline grid is half of that because it's 2 lines per every 1 line of text. So it'll be 5.2, yeah, there. And so that just gives us a mixture, because if you have bigger text, it could be like 5 times those 5 lines worth. This is obviously 2 lines worth. Smaller text could be 1. So all the text is going to sit on something, and that's what we want for consistency. Okay, so just so you can see all this, the way you see all these guidelines is press W, turn them off and on. I'll actually go through a couple of shortcuts, but not too many for you. But I use a lot of shortcuts. Using InDesign is kind of second nature to me now. So my hand just goes there and I don't even know, I'm doing it. So if you see me do something suddenly, just call me out, will you? Tell me to go back, show what I actually did. We'll all be fine. Right, just if you are following along, probably important things to do setup wise, just so your InDesign looks a bit like mine, is to go Window, Workspace, and click Typography, and that will give you the particular tools that you need today. Mine looks a little bit different just because it's my own edit of that. And then you also need, so you can see all these guides we were just talking about, go to View, and you'll want to be able to see rulers. You'll also want to go to Grids and Guides and be able to see a baseline grid, smart guides, and snap to guides as well needs to be on. Lastly, on display, one of the great things about InDesign is that you can change the quality that you're viewing it at. So say your computer is a bit slow and you've got a document with quite a few bigger images in it, and you really want to get down to the finer detail of the text and things, you could just turn them off. Fast display, you don't have to look at them, don't have to be loaded in. Perfect, you can just whoosh right through it, do all your text amends, whatever you need to do. Usually I'd use the typical display, it's faster. It's not going to display your images at the highest quality, there's a bit of pixelation there, but it's fine, we get what it is. And if you want to just see it really, really sharply, you can do an overprint preview or just turn that up to high quality. For this, I'm just going to keep it on that lower setting so we can just get right through it. Okay. Right, so shortcuts wise, W, you'll be pressing that a lot. You want to see the page as it should look, and you also want to get those guides in so you can click things into them really neatly. Also, you'll probably know all these because they're mega simple, but you know, zoom in, zoom out, they use them on everything, I'm sure. We'll be doing that a lot because we want to really get in close and just make sure things snap to those guidelines we've got there. But then we want to zoom back out again to see our page as a whole and get an idea for how it's looking. So I'll be doing this a lot. My hands are just constantly in those positions. The other thing to know, you know, copy, paste, cut, select all. You'll be putting in content, so it'll be great to know those ones. So just obviously Control, CV, X, A, or Command if you're using Mac. Okay. Oh, last thing that we've got pre-set up that I must mention, character styles. So to keep real consistent design, we've set up some character styles which do follow the grid as well, so that works out all neat and nicely. They're not there to force you to use them all the time. Obviously you can add in some extra fonts if you want, but they're a really nice base to work a magazine on. A magazine will have its own style and it'll have to flow through the whole thing, but often you might have a feature with its own little bits of style in there. So maybe you'll use just the body text in that instance, but then everything else about it will be its own thing. You want to keep a level of consistency, so it's all like one document, but then at the same time not make it too boring, so it's got a bit of variety in there. So I'll show you how we go through those, but we've got quite a lot set up, all labeled, and it just makes it super easy because you literally just click on the text, click on what you want to use. You don't have to go back and find out what font you were using in the last issue. You don't have to go back, find out what it was in the last spread. You might have edited that font a tiny bit, and then every single time you do it, it's ever slightly different. If you've got these character styles, it's the original, untouched original version that you chose. Click on it, done, no faffing. It's all just there to streamline your work and just get a real high quality level of consistency. Okay, so we're going to just get stuck into this piece then. We're just going to finish this one off basically. We've got a few bits to start off with. Got some text files, so we would have been given these by a client and then it's our job to lay them out. So we've got the nice culture feature, and some of this is already in, so we don't need to deal with that. So I think I'm going to start with the intro copy here. I'm just going to paste that and it will do a box straight away. Double click roughly there, and then I'm just going to grab that other bit as well, the caption, because that is definitely to do with this first image. And just paste that as well. So I'm using just Command V just to paste those in, and they just auto get put in boxes. All right, so the caption is pretty easy to do because I know I've got a caption set style for that. So we're just going to use, there it is, caption, done. I'm going to zoom in, make sure everything's clicking to those lines. So InDesign will probably try and do this for you anyway. There's also, if I try and zoom in really close, these smart guides come up. They're the green bits that's showing. So it's trying to snap to the top of there because that one's not in line. This is why you need to zoom in, be zooming in really tight, zooming out, just to make sure that is perfectly positioned. I'm going to just set this. So you've got all of these tools at the very top to do with your fonts, your character styles, and your paragraph formatting here. You might not have quite as much as I do, depends on your screen. Most of the things that are on this far right, you'll be able to find in a window, like these down the side. I've got these panels. I'm just going to go to paragraph formatting controls, and we're going to just make sure this one's on the baseline grid. And I'm also going to untick hyphenate there. We don't need that on anything. There we go. That. I'm thinking this maybe would be better in the lighter version. We'll bring that down to our line. Make sure that's in line with there. There we go. And then click it to one of these as well. There. So yeah, with your character styles, there's no faffing. I didn't have to go sample that from somewhere else. Literally just picked which one I wanted to use, and then I can tweak it from there if needed. I'm actually gonna add a drop cap here because it's a nice intro. We want to make it stand out a little bit, give it something extra. So you can find drop caps in the paragraph formatting panel at the top here, or you can go to the paragraph sort of side panel and do it. We're just going to do the one letter, and then we're just going to make this pretty big. Yeah. Okay. And if we zoom right in on it, that's not bad, but the O is pretty close to that W. So we're just going to tweak it a little bit, just so it's a bit more readable. So we're going to go back to our character styles up here, and we're just going to use the kerning in this instance. This is one here, if you can see where my mouse is. There is a shortcut for this, but I'm not gonna use it. We'll just pull that a little bit away from the W, just so it's a bit more readable. There we go. Great. That's great. Now we can also just pull this down a little bit. Just give it a nice gap away from that image. That was our first page done. Okay. So I know on this page we've got four of these because I've looked at the content already. So just to get us started, I'm just gonna copy the existing one. So copy, and then instead of just pasting, I'm gonna do paste in place. You can find that on right click or control click and paste in place, and then I'll just do it exactly the same place. I'm going to hold down shift. I'm just going to slide it sideways so it's not going to move out of alignment. There we go. And then I'm going to do the same again to the other two. There are shortcuts for that as well, but this is quite a few buttons at once, so you'll get used to it, I'm sure. There we go. So that's roughly that. I think we're going to have to tweak some of this a little bit, but we're going to leave that there for now. We'll come back to it. Sometimes it's easier to do a rough layout and then pick the bits you want to do first, just so you can see what room you've got afterwards. So I'm going to deal with this side panel because there's a side story that's going to go there. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool just to draw us in a box all the way to the bottom. Guideline there. That'll do for now. I'm going to get hold of our text. I think it's right at the bottom. We're going to ignore these other shorts for now, and we're just going to grab this body copy for that. This is just a rectangle box at the moment. I just wanted it to be that fill color straight away. So I'm going to get my type tool, just click on there, paste it in, and then you can see it is so close to the edges. It's almost running over at the moment. We don't want that. And actually it's not fitting currently, but we'll deal with that. So I'm going to right click or control click and go to the text frame options. And we're just going to add a little bit of a margin using the inset space in here. So just a tiny amount is fine. And I'm going to alter the alignment just because I do want to have a title at the top, and I'm not sure if I'm going to stylize that or add something else in. So let's have it set to bottom instead. Okay. All right, so how far out are we at the moment? Yeah, a fair bit, and we've got to get in a title. So let's deal with the size of the text. So this is quite big at the moment, so let's pick something else. Yeah, I think we could probably go with that one. So that's body text large. And then we are going to want this space, so we can't really make it that much narrower, and we are going against the grid at the moment. So let's find a good halfway point. this, often it will find one. There we go. It's snapped to halfway through that column. That looks like it'll probably work out. Just highlight that. We'll go back to sorting out a hyphenation, baseline grid, and then I think we'll just deal with the colors just to get this how we want it to look. So another great thing about InDesign is the swatches panel. So I've got them pretty neat in here, but every time you add a new color, they will appear in this panel. So say if you end up having 3 different blues for a brand, but they're all pretty much the same color, but they're all ever so slightly different codes, you can then see that that's going on and pick the one that is 100% correct, delete the others and replace them with the one that is correct. And then just to start with, it's just easy to maintain those brand colors and not just add in some random things. Always keep going back and using those same ones. So we'll be reusing some of these colors again and again. So thinking with these sort of earthier images, I want to pick something of a nice color, but I think the green is a bit too much. Yeah. Let's see how it looks with a bit of lightness in it. Yeah, I think that's the way we're going to go. Let's get our header text here. Actually going to put that in the same box, I think, for now. We'll see how it goes. White 2. And then I think I'm going to want to make this a bit more impactful. So let's pick something. Whoa, no, not that one. Yeah, there we go. Looking better. I know there's a little bit of an extra thing, so we might have an issue with space on this, so we might have to deal with that. A little bit of an intro. Just gonna paste that. I think we're just gonna add this in nice and small at the top. So obviously it's gonna have to fit in somewhere like that, so we'll have to deal with that in a minute. But let's try and pick the smallest font, which probably is maybe not fine print. We'll go with this one. I'm just going to get rid of these again. Yeah. Probably got some rogue returns in there. Just going to get rid of those. And then when we double click, it will fit to there. Great. All right. So I want to add in one extra thing, which is just a nice little icon feature cutting out of the box up here. So there is sort of room for it at the moment, but we are getting a bit squished in. So I'm just going to look at some of these spacing and see if we can just make a little bit of a reduction. So the returns are sized to the same as the text, which is over the baseline grid. So if I just reduce that, it's probably about 3 lines currently. See if we can get it down to 2. Yeah, there we go. I'm just going to select that sort of invisible return. And I'm just going to paste it on each one. There we go. Get a little bit extra room. Just make sure we color this. Now make sure you highlight the text to color it. Don't click on the box because you'll just end up with a white box. I want to do this again. We're going to do it just to match that other one so it has the exact same edge there. That is fine. Click that. Great. Okay. That's better. There we go. All right. We just want to do that last icon. So as it's village voice and it is a quote, we're going to add in some quote marks as a bit of an icon at the top for an extra bit of detail. So you could use double quotes, but it doesn't really give you the flexibility that I'm after. I'll just zoom right in on those. So single quotes, you can get between them. You can deal with that space between. Obviously, double is a single item, so you can't do that visually the same thing, but it just gives you a little bit more choice on what you can do with it. They're a bit, we want them to look really, really like typical quote marks. So let's pick something. Yeah, I think we'll go with, this is where you could go off your selection a bit. It wouldn't really matter. We're just going to make it into sort of an icon. So I'm going to just make this bolder, and then I'll go between the two, and we're just going to use the kerning up here just to bring them together. Just nice and tight there, like that. Okay. And then it's currently really tiny, so we're going to have to deal with that. But I think first of all, if I just double click that, quote marks always have this extra chunk of space underneath. It's going to kind of get in the way. So just to make that simpler, since it is basically an icon for us, we're just going to create outlines. So then it is a shape, and we can just use the free transform tool and just make it massive, color it easily, move it around, rotate it, and it won't be affected by the fact that it is a type, a bit of type, because it isn't anymore. Let's fit this in where we want. I'm going to have them so they cut off the top there, and then just sort of play around with it a little bit till it's roughly where you want it to be. And we'll colour that so it just looks like it's cutting out of the box. And there we go. I think maybe like you could pick all sorts of different ones there, to different quote marks to go in there, but we'll stick with those for now. They're doing the job. All right. So now we've got most of our bits in. We want to neaten it all up. So I'm going to deal with these boxes first of all. So obviously these four are together as a nice set, and they should be seen that way. This side panel should be slightly separate to it. So we want to make sure the spacing shows that you read them as a set. Obviously we've already kind of gone against the rules here, so it might cause a bit of an issue, but and we can also see that we're going to have a bit of an issue with the length here. And I would quite like it if these pictures lined up with that one, which will help us with the length of these, but then these two are a bit too long. So I think we've got all this width here we could play with. So let's just widen off it, which will go against the grid a tiny bit, but it's fine. This is where breaking the rules helps if you're dealing with your content. Right, so we're over there. So I think what we want to do is, just for that level of consistency, even though we're breaking the rules, I'm going to measure the gutter so we can have a fake gutter that's exactly the same width, just so it looks consistent. So I'm going to move that over one to where our text ends. Let's just extend that. And that's where we're going to start our next bit from. And we'll delete this in a minute, but it's just a guide that you can snap to right now. There we go. Oh, didn't get that one. Okay. All right, that's a bit better. It's looking a bit too close to here, so I think we're just going to pull these ones in away from there a bit. There we go. And now we also have all this space, so we could run these two to here. Doesn't quite match up, so I think we probably want to go somewhere in between if we can, but we know we've got that space if we need it. So out of the four shorts we've got to add in here, obviously add the long ones in on these right spaces because you've got that bit of extra space there. This is a little bit too close for me, so I'm going to just tweak these pictures, just shorten them a little bit to account for that. There we go. So the next thing I would do is I'd probably go through and paste in the text, and I'd do it just using this one first, and then I decide if it's move them around depending on their length, how they're going to fit there, and do the images last. I'll get back to that at the end of this spread, but if you guys just want to catch up a little bit, Anyone like stuck on anything so far? Hopefully not. Hopefully not going too fast.
Everyone seems to be following so far. We've had nobody asking for extra help yet.
Great, great. All right. Just give it 1 minute. I'm gonna just do some little sort of extra finessing, and then I'll give you a minute just to finish up.
No, that's brilliant.
Shame you can't attach files.
Cool. Okay. So I'm looking back at it now as a whole, and I'm thinking, you know, it's fine. It's going to be fine, but I think we could add some little extra details here, some little more attention to detail. So this header we've got here, wide open spaces, is nice. It obviously follows the style, the character styles we've got, but I think we can do something with that to work with what it's saying. So let's add in some space. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to do it as like little steps. So it's like a staggering, so it follows the tree line a little bit. Maybe a little bit too wide to start with, so I'm just going to use the formatting up here just to reduce that space a little bit. And I'm just going to copy that space, and then we can paste it in all three. And then I'm going to do it 2 times for the next one. So we've got that staggered step effect. And nice to see the I and the P line up. So let's try and do that with this one as well. I'm going to need to just widen that a little bit more. And then we'll just paste that into each. Actually going to tweak these a little bit just so position-wise they're kind of more where I want them. Yeah, that one's fine, and then these two are fine. This was a little bit far out, so let's just reduce that. Oops. Yeah, that's better already. I think it needs something, just a slight anchor to help us with this. So I'm gonna add some kind of extra shape in here, a little bit of extra color, just to cut through the page there. So I'm gonna just draw myself a box. I actually quite like that color, so we'll go with that. And I'm going to use these angle tools up here just to create a nice bit of a slash through the page, a slash of color through there. Let's just tweak that, and it will keep the top and bottom nice and flat, so we can just run that into the bleed. And then we'll have it chop through this part of sky between the trees and then up to the text. So it sort of runs with the angle of the text there. And it's a little bit of an anchor for the bottom of the text and also for the edge of the page. Yeah, sometimes you just got to add a couple of extra details, but you need to know when to stop as well. That's important. Great. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys know anything about print process, bleed. You might wonder what that is. It's basically where the printers will cut through. So if you just had that to the edge of the page rather than in that red section where the bleed is, the printer has got to cut right on that line. If they cut a millimeter off, if it's slightly wonky for some reason, you're going to suddenly see like a white edge where the print ends. So you need to give them a little bit extra, so then they can cut straight through that bleed section, and you've always got a nice perfect image right to the edge of your piece. So whenever you're dealing with photos, obviously it was easy with this being a block of color. Whenever you're dealing with photos on a page and you want it to bleed off, just make sure that you have got that. So when you take pictures, obviously take them with a little bit extra space around the outside. If you don't lose a bit of detail you want. And there is kind of sneaky ways of faking some extra bleeding if you really need to. Okay. We'll hopefully go back over some print things right at the end, but let's just keep going with this for now. So, so we've been through quite a lot already. This spread just gives us an idea to how things work, so then we can get on to the second one, which has a bit more of your own style to it. In terms of like how you put in images, images are within frames, within boxes, so you can move them around inside. It's a bit like how Illustrator has masks, but you just draw a box or draw an image and then you can change the frame. So if we just get some of this text in, and then I'll just put in a couple of images just to show you. They're all in the folder supplied. So which one have we got? Wave machine. Okay, so we're going to pick this next one. So I'm just literally going to copy straight over. So I'm going to select the same thing and then just paste it straight over, just so it takes on the formatting. There we go. We don't want that return. Address. And that one's actually pretty short, so I'm going to just copy that from there and put it down here, because we've got a little bit more of a space issue. So if we just find this picture, so you have to go File, Place, and then just find where the pictures are. And we want the Boating Lake one. And there we go. It just takes over that frame we've got. I'm just going to click on this now. So the picture within it, the percentages of that are up here. So actually this is slightly distorted currently because it's 54% wide by 66% tall. So we just want to make sure those are the same. So I'm actually going to go right click or control click, fitting, fit content proportionally. That's what we want. So it's not a distorted image. And then it's equal 51, 51. That's what we want. But it's not currently fitting fully because it's done it proportionally. So I'm just going to hold shift so it doesn't distort again and make sure we fill that right up. There we go. And then if you wanted to change the crop at all, just do it beyond that. Move it around. That's great. We want the focus to be on the boats down here, and the dark stuff can go into the spine. That's fine. Okay, so I mean these two we can put in later. Yeah, I think that's all going to work out fine. I'll let you guys catch up for a sec. I'm just going to fill in these extra bits. So if anyone is stuck on anything, just let me know. And then I'll give you just a couple of minutes while we do this, and then we'll move on to the next section. Perfect. Thanks. There we go. All done. Okay. I might come back around to it to have a final check. Normally somebody would probably have a good read through it and we'd go through a series of mems and all that stuff before we got into print, but we'll come back around to it like that's already happened. So, right, the next section. So the next section we're going to be looking at is a profile feature, and hopefully if you did get download all the stuff in advance, you have brought with you some of your own images to add into this. If you didn't, just use some pink spaces for now, or if you have a set, just grab something off your computer. Hopefully it will run as a nice set of images, but you'll see what I'm dealing with. So to start off with this, we need to add in some extra pages for this. So we're just going to go to our pages panel here and add in 4. That's how many we've got to deal with. Typically in a magazine, this will all be planned out way in advance. So other than some minor changes as you go along, you have the pages you have. You're not really allowed to deviate from that. We've got 4 pages. That's what we're going to work with. We've got to make our stuff work within it. So I've added in those 4 pages first, but actually before we get into that, I'm going to touch on the cover. So the profile feature we're going to be doing next is what we want on the cover. It's what we want to show on the cover. So make sure you keep your very best picture for the cover. Don't forget about the cover. It's obviously one of the things most people will see. We don't even read it. So make sure you keep that, make that the very best. That's where the seller comes in. So pick your best one there. We're going to add in some feature colors to match the piece and some little bits of text. You can really do what you want with that. We'll come back around to it at the end, but just know that you need to keep your best one for that slot. So we'll start on this feature piece. Now, there is quite a lot of text to get through. Mine is about a cricketer, so we've got lots of lovely portraits, but hopefully yours is, whatever you've brought along today. Could be absolutely anything, could be some of your work, could be some photos you've taken. So because we've got 2 whole spreads, I want the first one to be a really nice, really cool intro. And we want to use some of the great photos we've got, really show them off. So I think we probably want quite a short intro bit that runs into the next page, and then one of the big pictures we've got. So I'm just going to draw in some of these elements just so I know what I'm filling to start with. Oops, bit over. And then I think we're going to have a really nice header. I'm going to put a big header over here somewhere. And then I think there's an intro, or maybe an intro plus the start of the text running into the next page. So you get a nice sort of welcome into the piece, a nice intro, and then you start reading here and then run into the next spread where most of the content will be. So let's get rid of that. We'll get back around to the header. And let's just copy, where's our text file gone? Right, we don't need that one anymore. Here it is. These should all be in the file you supplied. Yeah, so there's a separate small intro and then the body text. So I'm just going to paste in the intro, and I want to roughly put this where we just put this box. Oops, don't rotate. And then we're going to grab all of our body text. So in InDesign, text boxes can all be linked together. So that's what we want to do. The reason we do that is because with a story, if it's over multiple pages, you want all your text to be flowing together, because then if you go back through and you're making a chunk of changes, you're deleting whole sections, you obviously want it to affect the next page and so on. You don't want to still have like where you would have been before, because everything will move up. So let's just paste this in. We don't want that bit that says body copy, obviously. Yeah, something like this. This will be something more like a body text. This is quite a long piece, so we're going to go with the smaller option there. And then what have we got this set to currently? Intro. Yeah, I think that's fine. So I'm just sort of getting a rough idea for now. I'm not focusing too much on their actual positioning. I think I'm gonna have a big title here. I'm just gonna put something quite generic for now, but you can put in whatever you want. So you could put in your own name, if it's about you, if your work that you're showing off has got a name, you could put that in. Anything if it's about someone else, maybe put in their name, put in a nickname for them. Yeah, something like that, but we're going to obviously style it up so it's going to look very different to this. So I think the first thing I want to do is get in our picture, because our content is really going to change our style on this. It's going to make us decide where we want to go with it. So let's add in some of these images first. So you won't have these images, that's important. Put your own images in at this point. Let's go with a real straight on portrait. I'm thinking we don't want him to be lost in the spine, so we really want to be looking at us as soon as we flip that page over. Don't make it too much about his ears. Let's make the focus on his eyes, so towards the middle, so where you'd be naturally looking. Don't like that little bit of shirt poking out in the bottom corner, so let's go with that. We've got our bleed all in place. That is great. I'm thinking it needs a burst of colour here, and maybe just do like a full page of colour even. I'm just going to draw a new box here to the middle. Not convinced about that to go with him, so let's pick something a little bit warmer to go with the image. This is where you could pick your own colours. Absolutely, this is it's all about your stuff at this point. So just pick your own colours, pick your own additional fonts, put your own images in, style it up how you want. You can follow mine along if you want for a rough idea on layout, but obviously you can deviate from that as much as you want. Right, I'm going to just, we've covered over our text, so let's make sure we can see that still. So object, arrange center back. Center back, not backward. There we go, we see it all. Thinking just to really make that color stand out, I'm going to go for a black and white version of him. Just a little bit cooler, a little bit classier, a punch of color. That's better. And then I really like to get a bit more of this white in, just to make it look a bit fresher. So I'm going to keep that nice margin there. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a box to measure. You hold in shift just so it's a perfect square. So we measure that edge, and then I'm just going to match the top to that. So it should click in place to there. Yeah. And then we'll do the same for the bottom. And we'll just have a nice sort of border of white. But we're not going to do it for the middle because we want the image to be linked to this page. We don't want them to seem like separate things. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. Now this, our header and page number are a bit weirdly positioned now. So actually I'm just going to lose it in this instance because I think it will look much better without it. So in your pages panel, we're just going to get rid of the fact that this is an A master linked page. So we're just going to get the non page, just drag it over the top and it should vanish. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to get styling it up. So we want to keep the body text roughly, yeah, I think we'll keep that the same, just so that's the consistent part within the document. That's all fine. Let's just give it a better position here. Oh, one thing we haven't got set up is our baseline grid has disappeared, and that is because it is not set up to be over things. So I'm just going to go into grids. I'm just going to untick this grids in back. So that means currently grids are always behind objects and we want it to be in front. So let's just tick that. There we go. We can see it all again. So I'm just going to position this so it uses our grids. There we go. And then we want to align this to it as well. Sometimes if you've got smart guides up, you might be having like a bit of a conflict going on because it'll be trying to snap to the grid, but also trying to snap to something else. So just you might need to just zoom in and work out what it is you want. Now we'll go for that to start with. I think in white it's going to be lighter overall. Yeah, that's much better. Now this title, this is where our extra bit of style is going to come in. And I think everything else will sort of fall along with that. So let's have a look what we've got. Ooh. Yeah, maybe a bit too childish. We want something really quite stylized to give it kind of its own theme. If you want to pick something more elegant and natural, it's entirely up to you. I think we're going to go. I think we're going to go down this road. We're going to go down the slightly sort of handwritten feel, a little bit comic booky even. Let's just make this run to the same width as our text here. Now this won't be on the baseline grid because it's a font that we haven't accounted for, so let's not try. Also, it is really not very straight anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to just bring this a bit closer together though. And then I'm going to deal with the spacing because at the moment a couple of these letters really merge together. So let's just zoom in. And I'm just going to use some of the tools up here in our character tools, character formatting controls. I'm just going to use the kerning we used before. I'm just going to nudge it away a little bit till you see a little bit of space. Oops. That can happen because you've got this image box, this coloured box in. Sometimes if you misclick your typed or you end up on here. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press Command Control L just to lock it, and then that won't be a bother to us. Let's go back in and just tweak this. You might like it joined together, so it depends on what font you're picking. I'm just going to widen it out. Like that. There we go. Cool. Okay. I mean, it's not bad like that, but I think we'll definitely want it white. So it's really just cutting straight through that bright colour. But I'm going to add a bit more style to it, I think. So I'm going to use some of the effects, but not exactly as you would, just as standard. So I'm going to right click and go into effects, drop shadow. This is a bit naff, a bit too harsh. I don't really want it like that. I want it to be super vibrant, almost like an outline. So I'm going to change it from all this stuff. I'm just going to turn it off to normal, 100% the color. And then we're definitely not going to pick black. Let's go for something as our secondary color. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. Now I'm just basically going to reduce most of these down to 100% or 0. So this one here, options, that's what creates the sort of fuzzy effect, the feather on it. So we're just going to reduce that down to 0. You can actually go into minus, I'm not really sure. Oh, it just eats into it, that's weird. Just have it as 0, so there's no fuzz. So it looks like a super harsh shadow. And then I'm just going to alter the distance a little bit. So it's a bit more even. I mean, it isn't even in numbers, but I just want to do it so it looks a bit more even below. There we go. Yeah, nice. It's got a bit more style to it. And that's something I can maybe follow through on the next spread as well, just to keep it consistent. So maybe we'll do it as a subtitle or a quote or something. Just use this font again, use this shadow style even. Another thing we could actually do is we could join the shadow to the stroke. So I'm just going to set the stroke on the text. I'm just going to add that. Whoa, it's way too thick. Find your stroke. Let's just put it down to like 1. It's got a bit of a weird thing going on, so I'm just going to change that to round corners because where it sticks out there. Happens sometimes with these kind of more playful fonts. And then I'm going to just change the fill color to our background color. Oh yeah, it's quite an interesting effect we're getting. Let's change it to the blue so it sort of merges with the shadow, and I'm going to make that a little bit thicker. Oh, nice. I could make that all white actually, and then it really like pinch out of the page, keeping it quite minimal. I do want to keep the blue in though, so maybe we do just go back to our fill that we had originally, the white. Yeah, okay. This is definitely a bit more of a comic booky style going on now. So I think we'll play with that a little as we go on. And we'll come back to this shortly. I'm just going to continue on to the next page. So this text is currently all of the text, and obviously it doesn't fit in that box. And there is a little red icon there, a little cross icon because it doesn't fit. So we actually want to click on that, and then we can just continue it with a new box on the next page. So I'm just going to click and drag from our top corner to our bottom line. There we go. It is there. Problem is it's all white at the moment. So to deal with that, what we're going to do is where this ends here, we're just going to go back to where it ends. I'm going to add in a page break so it never kind of tries to bring over some white text from here if we change this. So just going to type insert break, page break, and then this will always just start here unless you go back and delete that. And then from here, I'm just gonna color this all black so we can see it. There we go. Okay. Right, we all doing all right?
Yeah, so far so good.
Good. Okay. So this is where all the content's going to be. This page is going to have the majority. So we really want to cram in quite a lot, but we don't want it to be just all about body text. That's, you know, looks a bit too much to read. So we want to add in some extra features. So I'm thinking we're going to have, I'm just going to draw a couple of boxes roughly so we know what we're going to deal with. I think we want to have a quote, like a pull-out quote. because they're really great things to have when someone's flicking through. They might just read that one little bit on passing through, and yeah, it's just a fun feature. It might just be a really nice point that we want to pull out in a bold way. So let's say that's our quote box. We've got some really nice portraits in this set, so I think we're going to deal with another big one. That's possibly two, or maybe we just have one there. We just merge them together. Let's just alter this so we can see it. Yep. I think we will have because he's a cricketer, and we've got lovely portraits, but you know, we also want to see a bit of his action. So let's add in maybe one or two little action shots. And then lastly, so hopefully we've got enough room for text. So we'll just roughly put in our elements like this, and then I'll deal with the text first so we can see where we've actually got to position things, how much space we've got for our images and things like that. Typically with magazines, you'll get handed some text by someone, maybe in-house, maybe someone else has supplied it elsewhere. You might have to fit it, but you might also be able to ask them to trim it down. So you might be able to do your best design and then say, please, can you cut this to fit it, rather than you really trying to make your design, forge a design to fit that text in. Or if you're lucky, you might have designed the magazine and planned it all out beforehand and then given someone the word count to work to. And then you'll get all the features you want. Pull quotes, intros, you just ask for it up front. That's really the nicest way to work. Okay, so we've got a quote, image. I think we've got one extra thing, which is a nice like bio sort of piece, like a side box. I'm going to put in. It's got some little details in it. It's a really nice thing to do when it comes to profiles on people. Just add in some extra mini stories, mini bit of content. So yeah, it doesn't really look like anything right now, but at least we've got our rough layout there, rough elements which we can move around before we start fiddling with them too much. Let's not go into the text and fiddle with all the little bits to do with that and the styling before we've got it laid out how we want. So there's obviously a lot more text here. So I'm just going to continue this. And actually, let me just look back. Yeah, so we've got 4 columns across there. So I think we want to keep that consistent. So we're going to need to widen that up already. I can see we've got white text in here. So I'm just going to actually select it all and just make it black. It'll be easier just to go back and colour the start white on its own, because everything else is hidden at the moment. Now I'm going to continue this. I'm going to draw it from the bottom so it lines up. Make sure you do 4 across, and then roughly there. So still more. So let's see how much. And hopefully if you do it from the bottom, you've got your guide in the bottom, and if you do it to the top of where those other ones are, the smart guide will show you where they end, so you can just make it click to the same position. Is that where it ends? Yeah, right, that's where it ends. Okay, that's not bad. It is looking pretty full over here, so I think we're gonna just shimmy some of these over. There we go, that's a bit better. Let's just get rid of this guy for now. Yeah, as our text ends here, I think we're gonna see if we can make this box work longer. And then possibly we have our little action picture, a little sort of detail here. And depending on the length of this quote, I'm thinking we slot this in at the end somehow. So we've already got ourselves almost a rough layout. I'm just going to delete these and we'll look at what images we've got here. Make sure everything's where it should be. I think they're a little bit off, but they're fine for now. Let's see what we've got. So could have these two, but I'm thinking since we've got so much text, let's go for quite a simple image, just for lots of space. Nice soft grey background there. Going to get rid of, there's obviously something in the wall. You could Photoshop that out, but actually I'm just going to crop it up a bit. See if we can make this work in here. Oh, using shortcuts. Free transform, hold shift. Just pull that to where it needs to be. Try and get it in line with something. That always just helps with the neatness. So things aren't utterly random. Obviously a little bit of a nick there as well, which we could Photoshop out again, but I'm thinking to keep plenty of white space because there is quite a lot of content. We're going to just cut that there. Let's just move him so his head's nicely in the page, not cutting into the spine. Don't want to lose him in there. Actually, I'm going to just increase him a little bit as well. So there is quite a lot of empty. There we go. Okay. Maybe there's just a little bit too much space, so I'm going to just cut into him a bit. And perhaps we can move these two around. I really want to get in a bit more white space on the edge there. So I'm just going to pull these across. I'm going to have a little bit of a nice gap here and here. Not just too many boxy things in. If we add in our quote now, we can see where that's going to fit best. Where's my text doc gone? All right, quote. Oops. Go. Let's make sure we're on quote style. We'll just stick with this for now, but we could go against it and do something a little bit more styled to match like our header or something. I don't know if it's going to be, it's a bit too long maybe for that font, bit too small as well. So, so we had a position somewhere like here. Where's our guideline? Yeah, so it is where that box is. Just make sure that clicks to that guide. So we'll do on that one, and we'll do that one as well. So actually we've got quite a lot of room. We've still got a bit of space here to deal with. I'll just turn off the hyphenate there. And just see, yeah, that's better. We've got that random letter down. So we want a bit of space here, but at the moment it just ends weirdly on a line on its own. Let's just double check all our text is as it should be. So at the moment, no, it's not on the baseline grid, so let's deal with that. It is hyphenated, so let's deal with that. Oh, that's obviously knocked us over, which has caused an issue because there's a page break. It has knocked over the text on the first page because it was too long after we took off the hyphenate. And now there's no text, it's all gone to this page because that's where it's a page break. So that's where there's a new page. So we just need to delete that. Add the page break back in just after the white section. So we go back up to the white section. Whoops. And I'm just going to select there, type, insert break, page break. And then just make sure we grab that little bit of missing text. It's in white at the top. I'm actually just going to use the eyedropper tool here just to sample from a bit of text we've already got, and there we go. Let's pop back in. Right. Just going to give it a little bit more space between him and the text, and thinking maybe we start it off a bit so it looks like, so it doesn't look like a whole new feature, so it starts part way down so you read straight into it. But then we're going to have a bit of a text issue, so let's just move all these, make these a little bit taller. Okay. Yeah, and currently things aren't quite sitting on the same line, so let's just deal with that before we move on. So that green box is where the text should sit. Yeah, that's better. Is that already on it? Yeah, that one's not. Just move that down one. Funny. Yeah, it's all fine. Good. And then I'm just going to add in another line, another guideline here, just so I can see. Yeah, everything runs the same top line there. That's great. Okay. I've already seen a couple of things in the text that actually we can deal with right away that will just help us with our spacing. So you see here, there's like a single word on a line. We want to just deal with that. We don't like it. It doesn't look great. Just one word on a line on its own, pretty ugly. So let's just select it, and we can tweak that quite easily usually. So we're going to use our character formatting controls here, and we'll just deal with the tracking, which is the space between text. So I'll just reduce that a little. I probably wouldn't go any lower than like -20, because otherwise it's going to start distorting the text, but it depends on what font you're using, so just pay attention to that. Yeah, -20 is probably a bit too much. You could also do like the horizontal scale, so the percentage of the text. Just do that by a couple of points, again, not to distort it too much, but it does help. There we go. Lost it. There's another one here, so just going to double click on the paragraph, and we're going to just, there we go. Pretty easy. If it's really not going with a couple of bits of that, you can go the other way and do plus, and then maybe you can have an extra word, just so it doesn't look so lonely. Let's just check all the way back up. Oh, to slide around, I don't think I covered this at the start. If you just hold down the space button and use your mouse, you just sort of grab the page and you can move around. So much easier, so much more control than using your scroll on your mouse, because you end up drifting with scroll, but with this you really can just get to what you need to. So I've probably done that a lot already. I'm gonna run this one over actually, because we don't want to have to deal with the white text issue again. Great. All right, just gonna get back to here. Things are fitting into place, I think. So let's have a look at our little extra image we want to deal with. Right. Yeah, so we've got a couple of action picks. I'm going to pick this one. Just drop that in. Don't think we really want, we want to make it all about him, so let's just crop it in. So we make it pretty narrow. I want to show a little bit of the ground. I'm going to give it some context. And I'm just going to enlarge that to fill that height. Just so the top line and bottom line of it matches our text. And then actually I'm going to leave that so there's a nice bit of space there. So that's absolutely fine like that. Could make it just a little bit bigger than here. Nice. It's always nice to get in details when you're doing any kind of magazine feature. You want lots of little bits, of extra info in there, visual info, not too simple. So yeah, we're getting there. Let's just add in, let's deal with our text column, our side story next. So a bit like that one we did before, you want to just click on here to add some text. Let's grab it, I think it's the end bit. Yeah, so when I grab all of this, not that end bit though. Okay, paste it in. And then it's clearly like quite massive at the moment and also right to the edge of the box. So I'm going to do what we did before, text frame options. Just deal with that first, the bottom again. And then I'm going to pick something that's going to go a bit better with our comic-y style. So I think we'll pick the sans serif this time. Yeah, okay. Just make sure that's on the grid. I'll obviously change spacing quite a lot. I think I want to use some of these as little like subtitles, so I'm going to pick one of these. Yeah, definitely that one. And we're going to use it as it's a little like bio side story. We're gonna have his name as a title, or have your name as a title. Okay, so we're actually missing a bit of info here, so I'm just going to grab some. So there would be a little bit of text here. Keep the returns for now. Oops, don't do that. Right, so we've got our star on our first page. Obviously, the green is pretty random, so let's pick something that's going to match it. Yeah, we'll stick with that. Text, white text was better before, so let's stick with that. Great. Well, it's looking a bit boring at the moment, that bit, so we just want to add in our title. So I think, so we get in our shadow that we wanted before. I'm just going to draw this as a separate box, and I'm just going to put in whatever you want in here. Just format it the same. Oops. Okay. I was going to have picked up the stroke because that's part of the character's formatting that the dropper tool can pick up, but it's not going to have picked up the drop shadow. And at the moment, it's obviously way too big, so let's just use the free transform tool in the tool panel. Yeah. Hold shift, and we're just going to reduce that down until it's the size you want. Align it to the text below. There we go. And then we're going to have to do our effect again. So let's just remember what this was. It was normal, it was 100%. So all kind of the original colours and things. I'm going to use that blue again. And then we'll get rid of that fadey effect. And this one's much further out because it's much smaller. So let's just reduce that right in so we can read it. I think it's probably like halfway. Yeah, let's go for that. Just make sure when you're doing all this sort of thing, you have preview ticked, and then you'll see it right away what you're doing. Great, so now we've got a little bit of a link to our first page. We've got our same colours. We're keeping with that title. Right. So what are we missing? I think it's something a little bit less boxy. Another action kind of shot. There's a really famous one of him celebrating. So I'll go with that. Now I've got this one pre-prepared as a cutout, set up as a path. Those of you who have been working for us, you'll know what paths are. You'll have done quite a few, I'm sure. You might have even done this one. I'll explain a little what a path is. So if I go to clipping path options, it's auto detected that path because of some settings that were done when it was made. But if I just turn this off, the original image is there still. There it is. So it's really helpful because somebody didn't go through and literally delete the background. They just drew a path on top of it. And then in InDesign, I can just find that path. So in clipping path options, Photoshop path, if it's got one, and then just pick it. And there it is. And then what you can do with that is, because it's a funny shape, basically, if you select the image, the object within the box, we're going to use text wrap so that this text behind it works around him. So we're going to make sure we pick the one that does a round object shape instead of just like a square for the box. And you won't be able to see it clearly at first, but I'm just going to increase this and you should see a little line around him appear, and that's the path, just text wrapping around it. There we go. Get rid of that now. So we are going to have to deal with that in a minute, but let's shrink it down a little bit. Give us a bit more space. All right. So I think there's just a little bit more we can do with that to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm actually going to switch on Photoshop. Let's just leave that for a sec. You don't need to do any of these finer details, but just to give you an idea of what can be done. We'll come back around him. I think I'm missing just one extra thing. We've got quite a lot of space here, and since we used that nice slash idea before, just so the magazine's got that like consistency as a whole piece, I'm going to just copy that, paste in place, and then I'm going to use my secondary color with a bit of that. Now we could have put our quote up here, maybe, but it's perhaps a little bit long. So I think instead what I'm going to do is add in a caption that we've got. Yeah. Let's go back. There's our caption. So there we go. And I'm actually going to make this all caps in this instance, just because it's sort of floating on top of an image. I really want to anchor it to this line here. There's an odd return in, so let's get rid of that. And then to anchor it even more, I'm just going to color it so it's the same thing. Obviously, all of this is dummy text at the moment. It's just the Latin dummy text. So if you're wondering why you can't understand it, that's why. Okay. Yeah, we're getting there. Is Photoshop opened up? Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to go. So as this is part of the Adobe suite, InDesign uses any Adobe files, I think. Well, Illustrator and Photoshop for sure. So you can just go edit with Photoshop. You can even place InDesign files within InDesign files, like with InDesign Inception. So you update one and then it updates within the other. That's quite handy. Right, so we've got a path, just to explain a little about that. So it's drawn with the pen tool on top of the image, and it appears in the path panel over here. Always make sure you draw within the inside of the image so you don't get any weird edge. If you do it right on the edge, sometimes you're going to get a bit of that visible edge, especially within Cricut. You're likely to get a little green edge on white kit. So always make sure you go inside and actually just cut corners to make it smoother. Some of those weird bits of shirt sticking out just look odd in the end, or weird bits of hair sticking out. So just don't bother, just go straight over them. Click and draw a point, click and hold, draw the next point, click and hold, draw the next point. Got some nice curves, sort of less the better. Keep it nice and smooth, don't have tons of tiny line dots that are all a bit angular. It's much quicker that way and it's going to look more natural in the end. So this one's already been done for us, so we don't need to worry about that. But why I was opening up is because I want to do some color editing with it. So I'm going to change this to grayscale. Yeah, that's all fine. And we're just going to save that as a gray version. And to do what I need to do, it needs to be grayscale, gray in color mode, but it also needs to be a TIFF. So let's just make sure we save that. Okay. And then we're going to just replace the grey version. Okay, a bit dull now. But what you can do with it, which is really cool, is you can colour it with an InDesign. So once it's a grayscale mode and a TIFF, if you select that image within the box, you can then colour. So it takes on the grey, takes on the black, the grayscale. So I'm going to pick the blue. You could also colour the box, so you can colour the image in the box and the box. So then we could do it as like a weird two-tone thing. It's really handy to do it this way rather than all through Photoshop, because if you're doing a document where you've got some key like colour codes supplied by your client and you've got sections with colour boxes using that colour, and then you're putting in a cutout, putting in a tinted photo using those effects. You don't want it to be, oh, it's nearly right because you did it in Photoshop. You want it to literally use the same colour in your swatches panel. So, and it's really easy to change them as well. We don't actually want a background one in because it's a path. So we're just going to keep that one. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is just add that effect on it. But actually in this instance, it doesn't work with drop shadow because it's okay with the text, because obviously that's quite a solid object, but I think we're going to do it so it's a line around him. So I'm going to use outer glow and just do sort of the same setup as before. So we're just going to get rid of the soft sort of fuzzy effects. And actually just need to increase this so that it fills it out. Yeah, and then I'm going to use my, actually let's pick a soft grey to go with the picture. There we go. And what I might have done if it was time to do this, I might have just duplicated that so it creates a bit of a multiple colour sort of stripy motion thing going on in the background, so kind of like extra comic booky effect. But we'll see if we can get back around to that. So I'm just going to double check now that everything's all in place. So obviously this isn't, we'll just move that down. Yeah, that's great. We're just going to nudge him a little bit. And we already checked that everything lined up, so that's all good. It's obviously in the bleed, that's what we want. Great. And does this all line up? No, slightly off actually, so let's just bring it down there. We can see some hyphens in there, so let's get rid of those. Do that. I think I'm just gonna go against the grid a little bit and just pull this in, just so it's got a little bit more distance. Okay, so I'm thinking we're pretty much there. You could do some extra bits and bobs, but let's leave it at that for now because we want to make sure there is time for the cover. Super important. Don't run out of time for your cover. People will have a go at you. You don't want a blank cover. Not a good look. Okay, so I've saved my very best picture to last. I wanted it to be the most vibrant one. Yeah, and smiley. Let's go for that one. Great. Got to go into the bleed because we want it to touch the edge. If you wanted it to be insert a bit, that's absolutely fine. You could get away with not having bleed then, if your image doesn't really allow for it. He's a little bit too close to the masthead. That's the logo on the cover. So we're going to just slide him to the right a bit. Some people can be super fussy about having that over their tops of their heads. So let's just make it minimal. Get a bit more of that colour in there. I think the black doesn't really stand out particularly well. often you'll get supplied logos. You won't be able to change them at all, but you might be able to ask for a lighter version. So a company might have their standard version with all of their colors, and then they might also have a whiteout version because they know you might need to position it on top of things. Some people might not let you have that at all and say you have to place it on this color at all times. But in this instance, we've set this logo up for today, and we're gonna give you the choice of having white or black, but the icon always stays the same. That's their color, that's their brand color. So that one stays the same. Text is what's going to change. I've pasted these elements in as vectors, so they're not linked files, so you can just easily change that color. So I'm going to go with white because it just stands out so much better against the picture. And then, so we've got like a bit of it on top of the magazine spine, so it'll be like a chunk down here. And that's really helpful when you've got a perfect bound spine, because that can be a fill then, and you can put all your content on it. And you don't have like a weird ending where the printer just folded it a bit too early or not quite, and the colours just coming over onto the spine a little bit. So it's almost like giving us a bit of a way of neatening that up, keeping that nice and neat. And also it's a way of adding in a bit of colour from our feature. So I'm going to use that nice corally colour. I think it goes really well with the picture anyway. Pick whatever colour you've used. Typically, if we were doing this as a final document to print, this cover probably would just do this in here to get design done, but then we'd have to separate it out for print purposes, because we would need another section here for the actual spine, and then the back cover would be here as well. So you do it as one single item, and then you do the inside pages. Covers are usually printed in a different paper, and they might have a shiny effect on laminate or something. So the printer will want them separate most of the time anyway. Let's just get rid of these for now. We're just going to deal with the design part of it. So it's a pretty nice picture. So we're just going to keep it quite minimal, because that is quite the style of the magazine. So I'm just going to add in a real small bit down here, just a bit of info. So we'll name it after today. I'm going to pick something. It's all right, but I think I'll pick something with a little bit more of an interesting W. I'm not going to add in an extra font at this point because it won't link to the feature. It won't link to the magazine style. And I think probably our cartoony font is going to be a little bit too much for the cover. So I'm going to go with the body font because it's got a nicer W. I'm just going to make that massive. And then some of these spaces are really, really wide. So let's just deal with that with our kerning here. That's this feature up here again. Just bring them really nice and close. So really we're kind of looking at by eye the space between the letters, not the actual numbers up here, because different letters are shaped differently up against each other. So obviously a V and an A could be much closer together on those slants than a W to a 2 is, because otherwise you'd be hitting up the top here. So you kind of just want to do it by eye and work out what looks the most even. I think probably that one's a little bit too much actually, so I'm just going to move that back and increase that a little bit. And then black's a bit basic there, so let's pick our bright blue colour, and that works really nicely with the image, totally chosen beforehand. So if you want to go back and change anything, if you want to pick some colours that work with your cover image and then put those into your feature, obviously that's quite easy to go and do. So I'm going to use that, and then we're going to just have like a little secondary bit under here to go with it. want it to be a nice, like, solid block. So I'm going to pick something a little bit more simple here. Yeah, probably like that. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to set it as justified, which means it's going to run all the way across. And we'll just align that to this text above. Yeah. And currently it's a little bit too wide in places, so let's just increase the size. And actually, I'm not convinced about the boldness either, so I'm just going to move that down to regular. And then just increase it till it's sort of a spacing that I like. Yeah. And then a workshop as well. So those will all be a little bit of a different size, but they will fit into a nice block. And then obviously they're all merging together now, so let's deal with the line spacing. You're going to need a different line space for each one because they're using a different font size. So just make sure, again, you do it by eye so that those gaps are similar. You could actually measure them, get a little box, measure it like fairly accurately, and then match it. But that's fine. And I'm going to tie it to that other text, so we're going to make it the same colour. There we go. Give it a little bit of breathing room. And then position-wise, where do we want it to go? Do we want it aligned to something? Get it to maybe the edge, maybe the center of the icon. Maybe that could work with the eye. Yeah, okay, we'll do that with the eye. And then where is this going to look best? I think maybe we're not going to worry about this too much. I'm going to do it just where it looks best on his jacket. Just increase that a little bit. I'm going to nudge it so that center bit is still there. We'll just have it running off his shoulder a little bit. Sometimes things can look way too positioned, too perfectly positioned. So you might want a little bit of an overlap so it's readable, but it just looks like it's more part of the image. So instead of having it down here, just because that's where the clear space is, I'm going to have it just so it juts over a little bit. And last thing I want to do, just to continue with our like slices in and our colour, I want to just tie this to the spine with our coral colour. And then we're just going to make sure it lines up. Use a guideline here. And there we go. A little bit more breathing space. Actually, I'm going to just shrink it down a little bit overall. Go. Great. All right. So we've pretty much covered everything. There are a few bits we could go back and do, but you know, finer details when you have time, possibly even once you've gone through and done any amends. You don't want to waste extra time doing all the finer details when you know there are changes yet to come. So it's in a good position to show someone and then do all the finessing after. But I think it's in a pretty good place right now. So I think, is everyone caught up at all? Anyone have any questions? We'll rush through any of that a bit too fast. So let me know if you want me to go over any little bits.
So far, everybody seems to have been doing really well actually and kind of getting on with it, which is excellent. Great.
Hopefully sinking in a little bit.
No, that was excellent.
InDesign is just, I think it's quite intuitive when you get used to it, but it's really just getting started, and it's not something you're just going to watch someone do loads of stuff and pick it up right away. It really pays to have a go, which is why I wanted to do this sort of go along with me. Obviously, you can finish it after today, and any of our placement students that are in the channel, if you want to bring them along next week, that'd be super. Bring along your finished designs and we can have a look at them and talk about any questions you had there as well.
Just to say as well, we've got a question from one of the students, Amelia. She's just saying editing images is a bit tricky for me. How do I crop and do it and stuff properly?
Okay, so images in InDesign are always within frames. So if you have your image, you have a blue frame there, so you can just click and drag this in. So I could change this crop there. If I just hover over the center of the image, there's a circle that appears, and that's the image within the frame. If I zoom out, you'll be able to see where the image lies. So it's that brown line there, that's the full image. And I can just slide him around within the frame. I can make the frame bigger to show more of the image. I could shrink him down. So I hold shift, get that brown box of where the image is inside, and then just slide him back into position. I can also, if I just right click or control click, you can go to fitting and use some of these things to fit him into the frame. So I'm going to do fit content proportionally, and it'll just fit the whole image within our frame. Obviously there's a bit of space here because the frame is not made to fit his image at the moment, but then from there you can just scale it up to fill, or you could change your frame to where the image is. If you have any issues with viewing too many big images, you can also reduce your quality, your display performance in view. Make sure it's not set to high quality display, because you might have some issues with that once you get quite a few images in there, especially doing a magazine that might be 80 pages long or something. Plus you could have a lot of images in there all trying to be displayed at high quality, so just turn that down to typical. If you have it on fast display, you won't be able to see them, they'll just be grey boxes. So if you're editing pictures, make sure it's not on that, just do the typical one. If you want to actually edit the image more so, like colors and things like that, I would do it to the actual image file in Photoshop. So I could just control click on this, edit with Photoshop, take it into Photoshop, and then I could do some lightening. I could even crop it in here if I wanted to, and then go back in, change colors about it. We could get rid of some of these background things that we don't want with the clone tool. Save it back up, close it back down, go back into InDesign, and it will update. There we go, our mark there has gone. So a couple of ways to tackle that. Any other questions?
Not necessarily. I've got just one or two to ask as well, if you don't mind. So why use character styles and not select as you go?
So we don't always use character styles, but when you're doing a longer document like a magazine, and especially one that you might do a few issues for, it's really good to have that set up initially, because then you're not having to flick back to older issues to find out what fonts were used for consistency. You're not having to flick back a couple of pages and use your eyedropper tool to sample from one. It's a massive time saver, and you might have even edited some of those previous pages so the font is slightly more squished together because you wanted it to fit, or it's slightly larger. So when you use that eyedropper tool, you're not really ever sampling it from its original form, but when you've got character styles, you've got them all at their original forms that you decided when you started the design. And just click on the text box, click on the style, and you can test a few, and so easy. And then if you want to alter it from there, you can, but it's just a really nice base to work from.
Brilliant. And we've got one from Gabriella. Could you share with us how you crop your text box without using the move tool? I've seen you do it quite a lot during the workshop, and I lose a lot of time while doing it.
My text box without using the move tool. So any of these sort of boxes, you can just click on the box and drag the corners. Obviously in this instance our text is going to flow on because we've reduced the size of the box. So we might have to just increase another one. So just really drag the corners around to change the shape of the boxes. And then if you want to draw new ones, just click on the type tool, click and drag, and then you've got your box there. You can pull that back in. I'm generally always making it to the guidelines. So draw it roughly and then just grab that edge of the box, pull it to a guideline like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. And I was just going to say, I've got another one from Lizzie just saying, a lot of my layouts have a lot of empty white space. Any ideas how I can fill this?
Right, okay. So sometimes white space is great. Like in this instance, there was quite a lot of content on here. So it was really great to add in this extra white space. It just makes it feel a bit less busy, a bit more managed, a bit lighter overall. But what is great to have, say within a magazine feature or even like a catalogue or something, is those little bits of detail. So you don't want just like one big picture of someone and then a whole chunk of text and you've just run out and you've got like a white space at the end. Use that white space for something, position it in a way that makes the whole spread look more interesting. Maybe place a little detail, like pull out a little chunk of text, like a quote or a stat. Say like if there's some digits in here and it says 100 cricketers did this, maybe I'll just copy that, put it over here in a really big text style. Just make it like a cool stat thing. And we'll just make it huge and like really have impact. Maybe we'll do it in a different font or something, but a different color. We could put it in a box. You could also add in sort of little icons, maybe style them up to match what you're dealing with, add in some extra, shape details, little like extra side images. It's all about the details. If you look at magazines and any sort of decent adverts and things, they're not just one thing. They always have lots of little extra bits. They're not just simply that thing. They keep it interesting with all those little extras.
Brilliant. And we've just got two more. So Daniel is asking, is there a shortcut to change the colour of text or anything without having to go back and forth to fill?
There possibly is. In Photoshop, there definitely is one for filling. I don't tend to use it because it's not something I'm like going back and forth with quite a lot. So there might be. I'd say with all of the shortcuts, you use them as you want to. If you find what it is you want to do in the menus, typically if there is a shortcut, it will say right next to it what it is. So I'll use copy and paste in place quite a lot, which is a combination of buttons. So a few of those ones, once you're doing specific things, you'll be using the same ones all the time, and you'll get to hang with it. But yeah, I don't think there is one for colouring.
No worries. And just got another question from Peter goes, do you have any tips for students who want to go into the editorial design as a career, and what qualifications would they need?
Right, so graphic design generally, covers a wide range of things. Obviously, the more programs when it comes to editorial design, the better. InDesign is specifically great for that. So just make sure you get to know it really, really well. Try and pick up any kind of specific courses, modules on your graphic design course to do with editorial design. That will really help you get an idea. Often doing these like magazine projects can help because you get a real good mixture of things. And start collecting magazines as well. That's a major thing that I do. I have a ton of weird magazines that I'm actually not necessarily going to read, but I collect them for the design. I like to see new ideas, have a bit of a catalogue to go back to, and it's just really useful. And then you can kind of have a go at yourself with those, and then when it comes along that you might want to use that in a real world setting, you know, you've got kind of a catalogue there in your head to go back to.
No, brilliant. And I think we've just had another one pop in. Have you ever had to find the text yourself when sent a brief?
What do you mean? Like as in search for it on the internet or sort of type it yourself? No, not really. Not really. Typically, you know, you'll have a client, they will know their content, or maybe one of our writers will write something. So it's not really for the designer to be writing stuff. You might edit little bits because you know the content and you know the client well, and you'll say they've not quite written that right here, or clearly that's a spelling error. That's fine. Maybe you'd add in a title. Maybe you decide on a cool title you want to add in, where you're like picking out bits out of the text. But no, typically I wouldn't really be asked to actually find or write stuff myself.
No worries. And we've just had a couple come through. Could you talk us through the math of the grid again, please? I know you touched the subject earlier, but I'd like to take some notes.
Right, so there's lots of elements of the grid. Let's go to a cleaner page here. So we've got, let's get rid of this so you can see it a bit clearer. Oops. So we've got a few different bits on here. We've got the baseline grid. We've got the pink, which is our margins and columns. So if we go to margins and columns, our columns are set up as 12. We don't always use 12, but it's a really good number for flexibility because it just divides up into lots of different ways. So you could have 2 columns of 6 across. You could have 4 columns across. You could have 2. You could just leave it as 1. There's lots of options with that. You could have 3s as well. But the gutters, which is this the little gap between the columns, is always going to be the same. So if you want to use your text as 4 across, and then you've got another bit next to it, that gutter is always going to be the same as if you want to use 2 across and then 2 next to it. So it just keeps a level of consistency throughout, but it gives you that flexibility that one page could use lots of little columns, one page could use 2, one page could use, you know, none. So that's why we set those up. Sometimes you do break them, as you saw me do earlier, but I did still measure that gutter and use it so that these all have that nice consistent gap between them. The other thing, so the guides, I know which bit of guides you want to go over specifically, so I'll just go over all of it kind of again, but where we have these margins, so we have this gap up here and the one on the inside of the spread. This one's really important, the inside of the spread. In this instance, this is a magazine with a perfect bound spine. Can you guys see me still? I guess you can. This magazine I'm holding up, it has a perfect bound spine. So when you open, it has quite a curve to it. It doesn't sit flat. So some of your content will kind of get hidden in the spine. So we always want to make sure that your text has a nice gap to the spine. So we always have an extra deeper gap there. If you're doing something that is just like folded, find an example here. So if you've got something that's just got like a stapled spine, you don't need to worry about it quite as much because it opens completely flat. So you can see right into the middle. So this one's got a much narrower gap there. So just account for that. It depends what, you know, you'll know what you're doing from the start. You'll be told what the print setup is because it will all have been quoted on first by a client. So we account for that with a nice decent gap. And then the outside one doesn't matter too much. You don't really want it to be too close because it gets a bit tricky with cut lines and things. You don't want to to accidentally cut through. So just give yourself a nice one. So in this instance, this is 12, the outer guide, the outer margin. The inner one is 22. I think. Let's get my guides up. Yeah, 22. No, sorry, 18 and 12, and then the top one is the 22. The reason we did the top one so deep is just because in this instance we've got our page number up here, so that's just outside of our page area. So everything we design within the page is all within this page area, and it leaves that page number that alone. Often they are, you might have the page numbers and stuff at the bottom like that. So you might do a flip of this, and then we've left the open end bit, but we'll try to keep it to roughly a similar width to the edge. And then the baseline we just went over, so I won't go over that again. But just make sure you have everything set up in view, grids and guides, and just have them all visible in here. And then the very first thing I'd probably do in setting up a document is deciding on the margins and columns.
Well, that was perfect. Thank you. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. So just to say thank you, Vicky, for sharing those valuable insights with us. Whilst our students leave the session, are you okay to hold on to do a quick debrief after?
No problem at all. If there's any designs that you guys want to share with me as well, I don't mind having a look, see how everyone got on.
No, that's perfect.
Great.
Quite a lot of thank yous coming through.
Brilliant. Hopefully some of that's going to sink in and you'll get to start using InDesign quite a lot more. I know I didn't learn it until a bit later when I started into my job, and honestly, revelation when I started doing it, and now I don't use hardly use anything else daily. So it's a good one.
It's definitely an industry standard, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
No. Well, quite a lot of people saying thank you. A lot of people seem to have taken a lot away from it.
That's great.